Hello and welcome to A Slice of Pie, the semi-weekly newsish show that we do on this channel. And this week we're going to be talking about how the entire PC building space has been uplifted, and it's kind of amazing. So let's get right into it. How is everybody doing today? I hope you are doing well. Personally, this is like the fourth or fifth time I've had to record this episode. Well, yeah, it's almost like a completely different episode at this point. So let's stop beating around the bush and actually talk about the amazing thing that happened in the time between last episode and this episode. AMD is now on top of the processor game. Currently, with benchmarks and gaming, AMD is beating Intel across the board. This is extremely fascinating to watch because your usual Intel apologists aren't quite doing it. In fact, actually, I knew this was a big deal when Linus Tech Tips said that it was. When they said that you should buy Ryzen instead of Intel, which is something that up until now, they've kind of held back on. Having a recommendation from them is one thing, but it also came from Jay's 2 cents. It came from Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxed. Yeah, essentially across the board, everybody is singing the praise of this processor, and it's kind of amazing. Like, for the first time since the Athlon days, AMD is actually on top. And it's bringing the heat. And honestly, I really hope Intel responds because competition is good. It's better for us. We get better products. We don't get held back by planned obsolescence. And honestly, like, the better a gaming PC gets, the further away from the consoles it becomes. So yeah, I mean, it's a win-win in all situations if everyone competes. That being said, you aren't really able to buy these new processors. Unfortunately, I did check before recording this. They are still out of stock on Newegg, which means that, yeah, you're kind of stuck with the 3000 instead of the 5000 series, even though the 5000 series is actually better by a pretty significant margin. Also, something that I found was really interesting, these chips overclock. Like, we're seeing records of like 6.5 gigahertz on these chips, and that's incredible. Like, Ryzen hasn't been particularly overclocker friendly, so seeing it now is a great thing, especially because that is how Intel is striking back. Intel is striking back specifically by overclocking. They actually partnered up with EKWB and Cooler Master to launch a sub-zero tech cooler. Now, if you don't know what tech cooling is, it's essentially how a mini fridge works. It cools one side and heats another side by running an electrical current through it. The problem with tech cooling is it takes a lot of electrical current to actually effectively cool a processor. To do this though, they're actually using PCIe, so like the same thing that goes into your GPU, just to run the cooler. And EK even has like extra like warnings on this cooler, like, hey, if you're running this, like do this, just so that you don't kill your system. But all things considered, it's actually really fascinating to see, and honestly, I kind of want to play around with it because unlike liquid nitrogen, I am much less worried about killing myself using a mini fridge than I would be with liquid nitrogen. So yeah, world record overclocking attempt? That'd be so weird to do though. Also, it's only locked to Intel right now. We'll probably see an AMD version in like a year or two after the contracts with Intel expire and EK can make them for AMD. Of course, that's pretty much how all of these things work. Speaking of overclocking, AMD might actually be a much bigger threat to Nvidia than we originally thought. The reason for this is actually, well, the 6800 XT can overclock to near the 3090's performance, which is not a sentence I thought I would say, but because the difference between a 3080 and a 3090 is so small, it makes sense that with a good card, with good scalability and good overclocking, you would be able to get pretty close. And since I do plan on picking up a 6800 XT and I do plan on liquid cooling it, we will be able to test these claims directly on this channel. That being said, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford a 3090, but at least I can look at the numbers through comparative data on 3D Mark. Yeah. That being said, honestly, I'm fascinated to see what happens with this, but I have to get one first, which might be a problem according to Asus. You see, Asus said that supply is going to be scarce. Now, I am a little worried, but I'm a little bit less worried than I was about the 3000 series launch, because the 3000 series launched each card on a different day. The 6800 and the 6800 XT will be launching this week at the same time. And although I am more interested in the 6800 XT, if I could get the 6800, I still am getting an upgrade. And it doesn't really matter if I get one or the other. So really, I have two targets to hit, and they are mine to hit. That being said, I don't know when these cards are going live. Other than the 18th, I don't know what time. I'm going to be like refreshing Newegg like crazy trying to get one of these cards so that I could at least do something by the end of the year. And if not, we're gonna have to wait till 2020 when the cards restock, which is, yeah. But Asus did say in like 1 to 2 weeks after, the AIB cards will be coming. And speaking of Asus and AIB cards, they've got a lot of them actually. They have every single SKU that they have on the Nvidia side coming out for the AMD side. So we got a Tough, we've got Strix, we've got like a Tri-Cool, whatever they want to call that thing. But they did add one more, which is actually a hybrid card, much like the Fury X was back in the day. And so, not exactly as exciting as, you know, full on liquid cooling water block, but not, it's interesting to see that they did this for this card and not for the Nvidia card. And it might be because, well, overclocking. Like, overclocking seems to be kind of important to these GPUs. Nvidia does not plan to take this one lying down. In fact, rumor has it, and it's a little bit less than rumor at this point due to how much of it we are getting, is that Nvidia is preparing the 3080 Ti in order to compete directly with the 6900 XT. That's right, Nvidia is already preparing to try to beat these cards. That being said, if the overclocking performance is where people are saying it is, they might actually have to alienate the 3090 with the 2080 or the 3080 Ti in order to actually make it not irrelevant. That being said, that is supposedly going to be launching next year, like January. So we'll see. Honestly, it does seem like Nvidia may have actually been kind of taken back a little bit by AMD, because their response is not immediate. And I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. We really don't know, because the performance numbers for these GPUs haven't come out yet. And I plan on buying one. It's like, it's so exciting, but so nerve-wracking at the same time. Speaking of things though that I want, but kind of can't get right now, the 3080 Founders Edition EK water block is now real, and it looks so good. Like, EK did a really good job utilizing that weird PCB shape to their advantage. It actually has outlets on the back of the card, which is really, really different. And honestly, I kind of like it. In Supernova, it wouldn't work as well as in some of the cases that I've worked in, but in Dark Matter, I could see that route actually working pretty nicely. That being said, if you have your GPU up against the glass, that is actually probably the best way to liquid cool it, is through the back of the card. And I actually think that that whole style works very well for side-mounted GPUs. And honestly, it looks pretty cool. Asus is also partnering with EKWB to actually launch 3080s with these water blocks as well. Their version of the water block is a little different and a little bit less expensive. The one for the Founders Edition is like $250, which is really expensive for a water block. But digressing a little bit, Asus is going to be launching pre-mounted versions of their cards with these water blocks on it. And they do have the side out intake and outtake, and then they also do have the traditional version as well. So really cool stuff from Asus. Razer is launching a new Blade notebook that is not for gamers. What's going on with you, Razer? You're for gamers, by gamers. Instead, it's a productivity-focused notebook that's all white with minimal RGB and an Intel Xe graphics card. Battery life on it's probably amazing, and I do believe they've done a short circuit on it already. So it looked pretty cool. It's a little expensive for my taste, but it seems like it stands out as the traditional Razer quality. Razer doesn't believe you've got enough RGB in your life. They saw what Corsair did with their headphone stand and went, you know what, we can make one better. Not only did they release a RGB headphone stand, an RGB mouse bungee, and an RGB charging pad for your cell phone, they also released an RGB controller that you can put into your computer to allow your fans or other RGB peripherals to be controlled entirely through Razer Synapse. Now it is DRGB only, so that is the 5-volt standard, not the 12-volt, but it's actually kind of awesome. It is one of my main complaints. I've tried to make an all RGB system before. Now it's kind of possible. Oh, and speaking of that headphone stand, it has a built-in DAC and USB hub. Like, that thing is actually kind of awesome, and I kind of want it because it will make routing my headphones really easy, and also because I use a combination of USB and non-USB headphones, I can actually run my USB ones through the USB hub, which is probably why Razer did it. So honestly, as weird as a lot of those products are, I like some of them. I don't think I'll be buying an RGB mouse bungee. I say I don't think because I've never used one before, but I don't know. Maybe I'll just buy all of them and make it the most RGB setup in the world. We'll find out next year probably. The Xbox Series X and Series S and the PlayStation 5 have all launched at this point, and I'm sure if any of you guys were trying to buy one, you have found out that you cannot buy one. In fact, they're out of stock everywhere. Now this is concerning because, well, holiday season, and traditionally people who are younger would put this on the list for an interestingly large man who comes down the chimney to deliver. But if you can't get one, I'm sure Santa can't either. And that is probably going to make little Timmy sad. And I'm gonna just leave it at that. So yeah, they're sold out everywhere. Fortunately, I have seen them. I know they're real, but I actually am probably the only person who's been in the position in which I could have bought them and just was like, no, I'm just not gonna, it's not worth it. I'm gonna let somebody else who wants this more than I do get it. So yeah, they're out, they're real, they kind of work, which brings us into our next story. No, your Xbox does not smoke. But you might smoke, and some people have blown smoke into their Xbox to make it look like it smokes for a viral TikTok. And Microsoft had to be like, hey, don't vape into your Xbox. Hilariously, Nintendo was a little ahead of the curve on this one because they actually did have a little pictogram that said, hey, don't vape into your Switch, like a while ago. So Microsoft, you should have been on that, you know, like get that in the manual. And then I need to not laugh for this part. And then in some serious news, the PlayStation 5 is actually dealing with some issues. Apparently there's this thing with the sleep state and the solid state drive, and it's causing the systems to brick. Not a good thing for a new console that nobody can buy. Like, plain and simple, this is Red Ring of Death, except the Xbox would be sold out. Like, not a good look, Sony, especially because like my first thought was that the liquid metal was somehow leaking onto the PCB and that was causing issues, like, because it would possibly cause issues depending on what they are using. Digressing a little bit, yeah, not a good look, Sony, especially with your super expensive, super gigantic console that as I said, I've held it and I was like, this thing is massive. So honestly, I hope everything gets sorted out. I do not wish any ill will on anybody who uses consoles or their consoles themselves. PCs have their own issues. Trust me, this channel wouldn't be where it is if PCs didn't have issues. So moving on from that. And finally, this is one of those stories where it's like, how far are you willing to go to make your product viable? Seasonic created the Seasonic Connect power supply. We talked about that on Slice of Pie, and I was like, this thing's cool, but don't know where I'd use it. And apparently that was a real problem. Not a lot of people actually bought the power supply because it's difficult to find a place to put it, which is kind of the problem that I foresaw. I actually think that in this case, you'd probably be pretty much fine. I'm talking about the one for Supernova, but you wouldn't be able to use the distribution plate and that at the same time. Digressing a little bit, Seasonic sees your problem, and so what they did was they released another one, and then they released a case for that power supply. That's right, Seasonic released a case. It doesn't look bad. It looks like it's got a lot of modern features, but I don't know if I've ever heard of a situation where a company made something specifically to sell something else other than Fantex. Fantex made the Revolt power supply to sell the feature on their cases that they can run 2 systems in one case. But like Seasonic, that looks really good. Like, I'm gonna say that like it looks awesome, but like, I don't necessarily know if it's gonna catch on unless you guys decide to make a lot of cases with this feature built in. Like, I don't see this being as revolutionary as it could be. I think part of it is like, it's difficult. If I'm being 100% honest, like the way that they did it with this new one with like fan connectors and RGB connectors built into this thing, awesome. Like, it's really cool. And like the way that they have the pins routing, again, amazing. It looks really good. The problem is, if cases don't support it outside of your own cases, you need to then influence the market by making more cases that people want to build in. And at that point, you're then going to have to make cases that have the ability to do what you are showing, plus high-end water cooling, because then they can be put into a showpiece PC like this one or this one, and then that gets people excited about the extremely expensive case that you are trying to sell a power supply that's also expensive. So essentially, you have to have all these things come together, and it's really hard to do, Seasonic. And I wish you the best. And if you do it, if you somehow do it, I would be interested in doing something with it. But that's where we're gonna end it. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, you can leave a like, comment, subscribe. I do content like this all the time. I try to do it every other week, but we actually skipped a week so that we could get it on the right week again. So, and until my work decides to completely screw me over, which given the holiday season starting might happen real soon, we'll hopefully be doing this every other week. But until I know, you can always check my community tab. That's where I actually post like little updates like this. Or my Twitter. You know what? I have a Twitter. I should use my Twitter. I haven't used my Twitter in forever. All right, thank you guys for watching. Wolfie out.